Hey there, folks. Welcome to another edition of Stranger in a Southern Land. I, of course, am your host, Jake Manning. Today on the program, we have Jeff Clayton from the legendary punk band ANTiSEEN. You know, when I was coming up with a wish list, a list of first-round draft picks for interviews for this program, Jeff was on that list, and he's pretty high on that list. So I feel very fortunate to have him on the program today. And this interview, definitely lived up to that hype and those expectations. Actually gets rather heartfelt towards the end, and I was very happy to talk with Jeff about his career of music and touring all across the world. There's a lot of parallels between what I do and what he does, but he's been doing it for quite some time, actually 1983. So he's been at it for quite some time and has been making music and kind of a local celebrity. I can't go 2 weeks without seeing an ANTiSEEN shirt around Charlotte. So very, very, very lucky and fortunate to have him on the program today. But I'm also very lucky and fortunate to be booked this weekend. This Saturday, May 16th, I am booked for West Virginia Championship Wrestling in Princeton, West Virginia. Bell time is 7:30, so make sure you come out for that one. Also, make sure you follow me on social media at ManScoutManning on the Twitter, at ManScoutManning on Instagram. And if you have any questions about this podcast, you want to be a sponsor, you got any future guests that you want me to interview or anybody, just make sure you email me at jake@sslshow.com. Or if you want to book me for an upcoming wrestling show, make sure you email me at manscoutmanning@yahoo.com. Also, too, make sure you log on to the website, sslshow.com. If you want to buy a t-shirt, support this podcast monetarily, or if you want to listen to past episodes or watch past episodes, make sure you log on to the website. It's got all that cool stuff on it. I'm doing a little bit of work. Might update it here in the future, so make sure you check it out. I've been doing a lot of work on it recently, so make sure you check it out. But anyways, without further ado, let's jump into this wonderful episode with Jeff Clayton from ANTiSEEN here on Stranger in a Southern Land. Jeff, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate
pleasure.
it. So, I was glad to line this one up, and thank you for just taking time out of your weekend. Kind of last minute put this together. I've been kind of back and forth with you and stuff like that, and of course with our schedules, it's kind of hard to put this together. So
we're very busy men.
Yeah, that is for sure. But let me full disclosure right off the bat.
Okay.
I don't normally do research until I confirm the interview. So when I confirmed the interview with you last night, make sure it was going to happen, I was like, okay, now I'm going to research this. And then when I started researching everything about ANTiSEEN, because I've heard a couple songs, thought I kind of got the gist of it. But when I started to research everything online, I was completely overwhelmed.
There was a lot to take in, wasn't there?
There was a lot to take in. And so I feel almost bad because I wish I had a whole week to prepare for this interview, because I'm going to say this right at the top, because you've been making music since about as long as I've been alive. And you are, I feel, a focal point to this city, because I don't go more than 2 weeks without seeing an ANTiSEEN shirt.
Yeah. We sold a bunch of them.
It's not possible to walk around in Charlotte without seeing an ANTiSEEN shirt with at least once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And to think about that and think about the things that are important to the city and this region. I mean, and I started to think about it, and it kind of hit me. It's like, Jeff and his band, they're almost as important to this city as maybe like a Ric Flair, or even in a sense NASCAR in a sense.
Well, I appreciate it.
I feel it, because when you think about things that are local and they're important and stuff like that, for somebody to make music since 1983, that's an incredible achievement.
One of our boasts that we do when we're going around chest beating is that, when people hear about Charlotte, they think of NASCAR or think of Ric Flair, and we say this city is the place that ANTiSEEN is from.
Yeah.
So that's our what we call Charlotte, the place ANTiSEEN is from.
But I totally agree. Like I said, you're an important part of this community and stuff like that. I mean, it's just really truly amazing. So the fact that what I'm doing to get you sitting down on this podcast is just tremendous for me. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
I can't thank you enough for that. So, and you were definitely on the short list of people that I wanted on here. But now that I got you on here and did a little more research, I realized how important it is. So hopefully I don't screw everything up.
Okay.
But anyways, how did this dream of being a musician and having a band?
Well, man, when I first moved to Charlotte, I guess in '82, I was taking advertising design classes at CBCC.
Okay.
And while I was doing that, I hung out with a crowd that was going to the Milestone basically every weekend. And I had played in bands where I was from before, which was a place called New London, North Carolina, a really tiny town, about 45 minutes east, I guess. And and I just decided to give it a shot at starting a band here in Charlotte. And the first person I met that I wanted to start things was Joe Young. I met him at the Milestone. He was actually working there one night, and when we got together, we figured the extent of what we would do would be that we would play a few local shows, maybe get to open for some of our favorite bands that were touring at the time, like Black Flag or the Circle Jerks, stuff like that. And we figured that if we stuck around for a year or two, that maybe we'd record something and maybe put out a single. We had very low expectations. And the more members that came and went, the more we kind of did stuff to make certain elements of the audience in Charlotte rail against us and all, the more determined we became to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And now here we are 32 years later. And we've played in 16 countries and got out so many records and stuff. I can't even remember how many there are at this point. At last count, there were 70-something. So.
Yeah, it's something awe-inspiring when you look at it. Trust me, I did probably about an hour ago. But another thing, let's talk about the Milestone. Like, people refer to it as the world famous Milestone, whether it's world famous or not, or what it is. But like, what made that so special for people that are unaware of its importance and its historic place?
Well, it was the first club in this area to play what was at the time considered punk rock, new wave, alternative music. And ever since probably the early 80s, it never strayed from that format at all. Now, there's a whole bunch of discrepancy as to who actually has played there or not. And I mean, I was around since then, so I kind of know who hasn't. Like, a lot of people think the Dead Kennedys played there. The Dead Kennedys never even played Charlotte. So, but when Black Flag started the whole touring every small town in the country thing in the 80s, I mean, we all of a sudden became a stop for all those bands. The Circle Jerks played here, DOA, the Bad Brains, lots of bands like that. And I guess just the fact that that club allowed this kind of music so early, and when it was, forming, is what actually made it world famous, I suppose.
Yeah, because it's in the South.
The Go-Go's
Bible
played
Belt.
there.
Yeah. Oh, really?
REM has played there.
Yeah.
Nirvana. I mean, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's historic when people talk about that, and even outside of Charlotte, and I talked to him with the music scene, they was asking about the Milestone, and the Milestone is really not a whole lot bigger than this room that we're in right now. Like, I've been there a time or two, and if I dropped anything on the floor, just consider that toxic waste now. So, like, for it to have that type of historic importance and stuff like that, and very rarely do you see that, that you stumble across that, I guess.
Well,
nowadays.
I mean, all across the country, every day there are clubs that pop up, open up, welcome this kind of music, and then the next year you go back to play, they're shut down.
Exactly. Like, it doesn't have that type of lineage.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of places like that anymore.
Right.
So that's really amazing. I just want to let people know how important that place was. But anyways, so you said you met Joe and you wanted to be a band. You got low expectations. What was, like... it's very hard for me to talk about music things because the one time I tried music, I tried to play bass guitar, and then I found out I had no rhythm. But what was it about him musically that attracted you two to each other?
Well, I asked him if he played guitar, and he said he did, but he actually didn't. And he went home and had his brother give him a crash course on some power chords, and had this little crate amp, and he brought the amp over to my house, and and he's just chunking out these power chords, and it was a nasty sound, just all treble, all hiss, and he's playing real heavy-handed, and I was like, wow, this is really good. I mean, I thought he could play.
You were inspired.
And so from then on, we started writing songs together, and some of the songs we wrote on our first meeting are stuff we still play to this day. Not all of them, but some of them. Mm-hmm. And when you say you can't relate to music, all I can say to you is, man, just relate anything we do to wrestling, because there are so many parallels.
Oh, absolutely, especially when it comes to the touring aspect of it, and then just it's sometimes more of a play for passion type thing.
Exactly, man. Money. Because as I said, our expectations when we began were low, and then once we started playing, that's when we were hooked. Yeah, we're just like, we're not going to give this up. Mm-hmm. This is too good. The feeling of it is too good. Whether you're playing. I mean, it took us a while before we played in front of 500 people, but eventually we did. Mm-hmm. And playing in front of 5 people or 500 or 5,000, the feeling is still there when you have the passion for what you do. And so we just decided we weren't going to stop. Mm-hmm. And then the longer we kept going, the more we decided that, it's probably not the case anymore, but it used to be the case where we thought, well, there'd be too many people to get too much joy out of seeing us pack it in, and we're just like, we're stubborn, we wouldn't give up for nothing. And to our credit, we went through so much stuff that any other band that I know of, if they went through half the stuff that happened to us in the early years, they would have never got out of their first year. We couldn't keep a rhythm section to save our lives.
Yeah. Well, what were some early difficulties?
Oh, well, our shows, even in the very beginning, were pretty confrontational. Mm-hmm. And for the first, 3 or 4 years of our existence, we didn't even, there were 5 states we couldn't play in because we were banned from every club that had this kind of music. Yeah. We started having to put on shows ourselves, rent halls and put on shows and do that. And man, that probably went on for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And any other band would have just said, forget this. Yeah. We're not gonna rent halls, rent PAs, and put on shows, but we did, and the more we were kind of forced to do that, the more we just thrived on keeping going and showing them all, we don't need you. We'll do whatever we got to do to keep doing what we do. And that attitude is still there right now.
Well, and I think that's a punk rock mentality. Is a very DIY, attitude, and I think that's something that's across the board. And I think that's something that's just now catching up with society now. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people like, I want to support the artists, I don't want to support the corporations.
Exactly.
And punk rock has been doing that since the 80s. That's
70s.
Yeah, I mean, even longer, I guess, in that case. But I mean, it's just a sense of like that. Support the artists, support them, don't support the corporations, support the guys that are running the halls and doing that type of work. But speaking of punk rock, what is it about punk that attracted you? What makes the fact that I'm not sitting down with Jeff Clayton, the folk singer, right now? What's the tipping
Because
point?
I probably would have packed it in years ago. Let's see. Well, man, the first time, in high school, we were into stuff like Kiss and Aerosmith and Ted Nugent, things like that. But when you're a garage band in high school, it's kind of far-fetched to set your goals on being the next Kiss or the next Aerosmith. I mean, because there's an awful wide gap from the garage to the arena.
Yeah.
You know, and so I guess the first time we discovered groups like the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, and the Clash, and stuff like that, and a bunch of the stuff from the '60s punk stuff like the MC5 and the Stooges and stuff like that. We're just like, man, we don't have to.
It was more sense like we can do this.
You know, we can do this now.
Yeah.
We don't have to wait or, you know, we don't have to dress ourselves up and present it to a record label to let them do what they will with us. You know, we can go ahead and take the reins and do it right now. And man, when we started, we knew damn well that the kind of music we were playing was not going to reap any gigantic, you know, rewards or anything at the end. You know, we knew it was very polarizing, and it always has been from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And probably not the smartest business move in the world, but I know plenty of people that signed with big labels and they don't have their band anymore, and because they can't. And I still got my band. We control everything we do, you know, and I guess at this point, it's safe to say I probably wouldn't have it any other way. I guess I don't have any choice at this point.
It seems like you always back yourself into a corner at one point in time.
Yeah, I'm back in the corner. Okay, we're happy.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, I've only got one option out. Finally, I don't have to worry about all this other stuff. But anyways, let's talk a little bit. Like, you know, you talk about recording and albums and putting it out. Like, nowadays it's very easy. You can record an album, you can put it out online and all that stuff. I think a lot of kids, especially now, don't realize the advantage they have as far as technology goes.
There's no way they know.
Yeah,
There's no way they know, man.
So why don't you educate some people on how difficult it was just to record, put out like the first album, you know,
well,
for
man,
sale?
You had to go to a studio.
Mm-hmm.
And studios charge by the hour.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not cheap. So, you know, we'd save X amount of money. We have X amount of time to do X amount of songs. And it was bam, 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 let's get it done. That's mixing and everything. And then if you wanted to put out your own thing, I mean, you could go the route of putting out a cassette tape or something like that. But we from the very first thing we ever did, we put out vinyl. Mm-hmm. Always. And we still put out our stuff on vinyl today. And, I mean, now we got companies that pay for it and do it. But our first 2 or 3, we paid for everything. We had to go get the covers printed, you know, and pay to get the record print. Well, first we paid to get it recorded. Then we paid to get it mixed. Then we paid to get it mastered. Then, you know, and all this is like watching the clock. I told a person recently, just joking around, I said, that's why our songs are so short, because we were watching the clock, not because...
It always seems like the thing that the signature thing that artist does is like, why did you do that? I'm like, I didn't have enough money to do anything else.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, everything was tougher. You know, like, I'm still amazed at technology today. Matter of fact, I just got this iPhone like a couple of days ago, and it's witchcraft to me, you know. And like now, you can, when you're touring, you just do a GPS. You know, you can look and see where the gas stations are. You know, you've got your phone right there beside you. Man, we had to find pay phones, read maps,
ask people.
Sometimes of roads that didn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can't imagine like that, because I just made a joke online about like I've been wrestling since the days of when wrestlers actually used maps. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't too long ago either for me. I mean, like, you know, in my short wrestling career, it seems so long. But as far as like, you know, technology, especially touring, I think just the accessibility of like, okay, I know the building I'm going to, but I don't know the address. I'll find the address. Okay, now how do I get to this address? And then it's a 5-minute deal, where before it was, we got to ask gas station attendant, or we got to do this, or we got to figure this road, or what.
There were many, many nights we'd stay parked in front of a place in a bad neighborhood, walking around trying to find a payphone to see if someone was going to come open the place. And sometimes we wouldn't even be at the right building. You know?
But let's talk about like touring and getting that together, and like it was just those early days. Like I said, like technology makes that very easily as well.
Yeah.
But as far as like getting booked in clubs and booking your own stuff, like just talk about how hard that was in the beginning.
Well, you know, back then you couldn't do an email and send it to someone and figure they'd see it in the next 6 to 8 hours. I mean, you know, we had to call. You had to call. First you had to find out what the booking time was for the clubs, because the booker would only be in a certain number of days.
Well, how are you even finding those clubs to begin with? 'Cause it's not like you can do Google search.
Reading magazines, talking to other bands.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you're right. You couldn't go on the computer and go punk rock clubs in Idaho.
Yeah.
You just had to hear someone say, "There's this club in Idaho, that we play." Oh, okay. What's the name of it? You know, and call directory assistants. And you had to pay for long distance calls too.
Yeah.
So when you booked a tour, you better believe there's going to be a big long distance phone bill at the end of that month. You know, so. And that was always a band expense. Oh, I booked the tour, so y'all got to cough up some money for the. $300 long distance.
Yeah, and as far as like when you want to do touring, were you trying to go out as many times as possible, or were you doing little shots? Like how are you piecing that all together?
We pretty much did the same thing then as we do now. We did a lot of 2 and 3 day shots, and like a couple times a year do anywhere from 10 days to a month. I remember once we toured Europe for 2 months, and man, it about broke the band up.
Yeah.
Man, there are groups out there that are touring machines. They
Yeah.
tour 6 months out of the year. We're not that kind of people. We can't. I don't think we could coexist that long, or at least the lineups we had back then. I don't know. I think the guys that I've got now, I think we could probably pull it off. I don't know if I could physically withstand like a month of touring anymore, but
yeah. So when you're piecing these tours together and stuff like that, well, like what's the travel situation? You all get in a van, you're packing in, and then just
we get in a van, pack the equipment and the merchandise, and we. I pop in the address to the place we're going, and boom, we go.
there's a lot of little tricks to traveling that I think many people don't know about, but I feel like people like you and me kind of know there's a lot of little tricks, like little tricks if you can check in early to a hotel, like you can book it that night, so you basically you can get in and get a little nap before the show, and then you're after the show, and you only got to pay for one night in a hotel room. That's a little trick.
Anytime that's possible, we do that. Yeah.
I mean, is there any other little tricks that you guys do, like on the road and stuff like that? Like a big one of mine is sometimes I'll, make sure we get as close as we can, or I'll get to the building or assess things that way.
Well, we always like on the last night of any trip, no matter how far it is, we drive. We drive all night, and
because you want to get back that next. Because if you get back,
you want to get back and have what's left of your weekend, and you also don't want to spend no more money on hotels and stuff like that.
I just did a gig in Connecticut a couple weeks ago on a Friday night, and of course we got partway up and then did the show, and then Friday night drove all the way back, and then I'm back Saturday morning, and I got a full day Saturday and Sunday, so it didn't feel like I was wasting my weekend in that sense.
We're definitely road warriors, man. We don't bat an eye at a 12, 14-hour drive. I mean, we may cuss about it a little bit, but 7 or 8, it's a breeze. We just get right in the van after the show and go, Oh, hey, another thing I wanted to say about why touring is easier these days than it was in the old days, we have a booking agent now.
I'm sure. They can tell you where to go and all that stuff. And that
arranges contracts and guarantees and stuff like that. That was stuff that we were pretty much flying by the seat of our pants on when we began.
Yeah.
Drive, 10 hours and do a door deal, and 6 people show up. Here's your $10.
Keep it. Just give me a beer instead. Yeah. But yeah, like let's talk about some of those interesting experiences, especially in touring and stuff like that. Probably what was one of your better gigs that you did, especially early on. Like maybe a gig that you're like you traveled someplace. I'm like, oh, we're in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if people are gonna come out, and people came out.
We found earlier on that we seemed to draw a bigger audience in some of the more off the beaten path places, like the smaller towns or the middle-sized cities, than we did the big city. We kept hammering the big cities till we finally got followings, there, especially here on the East Coast, but Texas, places like that. But it's hard to think back that far to remember any one that stuck out. I mean, personally, in the last 15 or 20 years, I like the kind of shows where they fly us in and we do one show and then they fly us home.
Personally.
Those are our favorites.
Of course. But I'm trying to think of some other ones. I was going somewhere with touring right there. But here we go. Early on, what was the big moment? What was the tipping point where you realized, hey, we're kind of a big deal? Like, because you had such low expectations, you just wanted to get a record out, have people hear your music. What was the point where you're like, oh no, people are listening to us and we're kind of popular?
I can tell you exactly when that was. That was in 1992 when we did our first tour of Europe, and the very first city we played on the tour was Bremen, Germany. And we were headlining. We weren't opening for anyone. And we're in the dressing room. It's a nice dressing room, by the way, with food laid out and fix us dinner and all this stuff. So we kind of were like, wow.
Yeah. It's like, I don't have to pay for this, do I?
But they came and told us that the club was sold out, and they turned away like a couple hundred. And when we came out and played, we opened with one of our songs, and all these German people were singing along to our songs, and that's when we were just like, wow, so people know who we are.
What was the thing that got you there? What do you think? Like, it was a certain album, or was it the fact that you guys had just been killing it on the road, or what was it?
We signed to a label at the time was based out of Philadelphia, and then they relocated to the West Coast called Rave Records, and the guy that ran that was a fellow named Todd Cody, and he first brought up the possibility of us even touring Europe, and we just thought that was so far-fetched. We just like, you're crazy. Yeah. They want to come see us in Pittsburgh. Why would they come see us in Berlin? But he was the one who got us over there the first few times, and ever since then, Germany has been one of our biggest fan bases. It's like been consistent. For 3 decades. So grateful to him for that.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the places you toured in Europe? And that's the thing that's interesting about Europe. And when I talk to pro wrestlers that tour Europe, how amazing it's like, okay, I'm in Germany one day, I'm in England the next, then I'm in France, and then I'm in Spain. And you're going to different countries.
Oh, yeah, you go to different countries like you go to different states here. Oh, man, like I said, we've been in 16 countries. I don't know if I can name them all, but... we've been to the UK, Italy, France, Belgium, Holland, Finland. We've been to some of the former communist countries like Czech Republic, Slovenia, places like that. And even there, it seemed like some of the more off the beaten path towns and cities we played, it seemed to be the biggest following for us. Mm-hmm. It took a while to that's not true. I guess it took a while for us to make a impact in Berlin, but a place like Munich, we did real well, like from the start. Mm-hmm. We kind of stopped going for a while. Like there was a 10-year period where we didn't go. We didn't go overseas at all. And when we went, after 10 years, you could tell that our presence being gone for 10 years did a little bit of damage, but we're building it back up. We've been played some festivals over there and one-offs where like the ones I'm talking about where they fly us in, we play the show and then they fly us back out. And hopefully there's going to be more of that in the future. But what we're concentrating on for 2016 is going to Japan for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. Do you have are you getting a sense that you have a decent presence over there?
We've had a couple of albums released there, a couple singles, and it hardly made a blip on our radar. But I don't know how it's going over there. But now we're talking to companies, that like do stuff over there, and they're interested and they're trying to get it lined up now. They were even. I probably shouldn't say this on your podcast, but they were talking about possibilities of incorporating something with Big Japan. I don't know how in depth that is or how surefire that is, but it would be nice.
Absolutely, and they seem to be doing okay. But since you brought up Big Japan, there's quite a bit of connection of wrestling in your music as well, and that's kind of how you've come on my radar. That's for sure. You've written songs about like McFoley, Sabu, Abdullah the Butcher, and stuff like that, and your song "Parts Unknown" I know quite well. So, what made you want to incorporate wrestling into your music?
Well, some people, I guess, when they first get into music and they want to start a band and all, they're like really inspired by, like, I want to be a rock star. Mm-hmm. We had a weird way, or at least I did. I had a weird way of looking at that. I never felt I was rock star material. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to be a David Lee Roth or a Sammy Hagar or nothing like that. Yeah. But I could see myself being a Abdullah the Butcher or a Bruiser Brody. And incorporate that into what we were going to do. And plus, even at an early age, even before we knew we were watching Showmanship, we learned showmanship by watching wrestling. Mm-hmm. By learning how to hold an audience in your hand and not just merely walk up in front of them and do what you do and walk off. To make it to where when you walk on the stage, it's something. Mm-hmm. It's not just anything, if that makes any sense at all. I mean, you from being a big wrestling fan, you learn all the things like how to walk on the stage, how to walk off the stage, how to act during the dead time between the songs, all that stuff. That's where we learned all that from. Mm-hmm. Just how to work an audience, how to work a room, and then when we learned about punk rock, it was all anti-rock star then, so we were set. We didn't have to wear spandex and zebra skin shirts. We could wear, this kind of crap right here that we were wearing anyway. Yeah. And so that's where that connection comes in. Plus, I don't know if you know or not, but I'm a disgruntled wrestler anyway. So, and I took a shot at it at one point in the early 90s, but I had so much going on that I couldn't devote the time needs to be devoted to it to make it be a serious thing for me.
It really needs to become your life, probably the way that music has become your life. And that's the problem I'm running into now.
And I already had the music thing, so I didn't have time to squeeze. And I had a family too, so I didn't have time to squeeze another thing that demanded, about 90% of your time. Yeah, I just didn't have it to do, and gave that up. But
But you gave it a shot. That's important.
I gave it a shot. Yeah.
Like I said, it's just like I gave it a shot with a bass guitar. but no, and that's the interesting about wrestling is that you really have to dedicate so much time to it, and it has to be a passion and stuff like that. But I mean, you showing your love for professional wrestling, and the wonderful thing is about the wrestling community, they embrace that because it feels like you're an outsider, because a lot of times you made fun of because you like pro wrestling, which is really weird, but it happens, much in probably the way that people that like punk rock get made fun of because they like that. So I think there's a big connection. And now that I think there's a lot of DIY guys out there, that are guys that are do it themselves, they've got their own podcast, they're running their own wrestling shows. A big thing that I say right now is you can't be a bag roller in wrestling. You just can't roll your bag in, do your show, and come back out. You really have to have a lot of things going on. You have to be doing this. You have to be doing this. You have to have a social media presence. Maybe doing something YouTube-wise. Maybe a podcast. But maybe even run your own show, or maybe doing graphics for somebody else. Yeah. Have you kind of seen that change in music as well, where guys just can't? You just can't be a band that goes out there, rocks, and then comes back off. You have to have.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, someone in the organization has to be the one that handles all that. Mm-hmm. And there are bands out there that think they just sleek into the club, play, and then get drunk, get high, hang out, and, more power to them. But they usually don't last very long or go very far. So.
And I see, like punk rock, there seems to be that very just hard edge to it, in a sense that it's, you see a lot of people like move away from it and get out of it, and then some people like have there's real tragedies to it, and like I said, you've gone through a lot of members and stuff like that throughout your whole career. Some have probably moved on more successful things, and some probably unsuccessful things. Mm-hmm. That's got to weigh on you as well.
Yep. Well, one of our bass players, he went on to become the road manager for the radio band Train.
Yeah, Thomas O'Keefe.
Tom O'Keefe. You know Tom O'Keefe.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, too, is like there's success stories. And also, too, you see that in wrestling sometimes, too. A guy won't be as successful in the ring, but then he'll step outside of it. But he understands how things operate, and they become successful other places and stuff like that. And it's nice to see success stories out of that. It's almost like you're beating the business as opposed to business beating you. And that happens a lot sometimes. I think in our two professions, like I think guys get caught up in what this all is. Mm-hmm. They forget about real life sometimes, because you have to be so focused. Like I said, wrestling takes 90% of your time, and music takes 90% of your time, and you realize that you have to realize you're in a bubble sometime to get outside of it. So for me, sometimes I have to pull myself out of wrestling and do other things, just to realize that I'm a human being and I got other things going on. What do you do to pull yourself out of your bubble and be like, I'm a human being and these are the things that I do?
Well, I've got 3 kids, 2 stepkids, a girlfriend. So
kids will snap you out of that bubble real fast.
Yeah, kids will get you out of that real quick. So I don't really have a shortage of things to take up my mind space whenever I'm not doing the music thing. And, and plus when there's any downtime, which downtime is getting rarer and rarer, but, I'm a movie freak, and I like old, just about any kind of movie you could, like old B movies, and Netflix has really been a distraction since it has come into my life. But, I got a lot to keep me busy in music and out of music, so I'm never like not busy.
Absolutely. Now, where are you at right now? Are you guys working on an album? You working on a tour? Where are you at in the future right now?
We got a few one-off weekends booked, and like I said, we're working on the Japan thing. We've even had some interest in South America.
Okay.
Talking about but all this is in the very
pre-planning,
very beginning planning stages.
Interest, would you like to? Yes, I would, of course.
Okay, well, now let's see what we can do. But for the first time in a long time, the band is just now starting to write new material, and it's been real fun. And we're also at a point now where we can just take anything from our past catalog and just whip it right out and play it right now, because I got basically a lineup comprised of guys that were big fans before they were ever members of the band. Mm-hmm. And
Which has got to be helpful when you're looking for somebody, because if they know your catalog and they have a passion for your music, then it's pretty.
Well, the bass player Barry Hannibal was he's been in ANTiSEEN for 14 years, but he spent a lot of the time as a drummer, and then he was gone for a little bit and then came back. But since Joe passed away, it's kind of me and Barry kind of steering the boat now, and the Gooch on drums, Mad Brother Ward on guitar. They've been longtime fans. We've known Mad Brother Ward for 20-something years. He was always with the band somehow. If he wasn't selling merch, he went along on road trips as a roadie, and now he's playing guitar. So you graduate in this organization.
There's room to move up. There's no glass ceiling. That is for sure. But anyways, I mean, you brought up about Joe, and just we're having such a nice, wonderful, positive conversation. I don't want to bring it down in a sense, but I feel like we should talk about it just very briefly about his passing and maybe what that meant to the band. Like, because most bands would have packed it in.
Yeah.
But do you feel like you continuing is honoring him and reminding people?
Joe and I would talk about things like this. As morbid as that may sound.
No, not at all.
But
I would have the same conversation.
He said to me, "Don't ever quit because of me." He even said, "If something happens to me, I get my hand crushed, can't play no more, I get a stroke or whatever." He said, Russ is the one, Mad Brother Ward, is the one that needs to take my spot because he can play the way it needs to be played in ANTiSEEN. Because we don't have like your typical guitarist, mentality in this band. It's a lot more heavy-handed and primal, and if you can't grasp that, if you're interested in showing off your talents and stuff, there's no room for you here, because we do things a certain way, and that's the way we do it, and we're not going to change. And there was never even discussed that we would do auditions after Joe passed. As a matter of fact, I was kind of torn on whether I should keep going or not. But Joe's brother assured me, gave his blessings, you need to keep going, because, as long as ANTiSEEN's out there playing these songs that you and Joe wrote, Joe Young stays alive. Figuratively. Yeah. And I couldn't just walk away from something I've sunk at that point 31 years into. Yeah. So here we are, back, still at it again, and still playing the songs that Joe and I wrote. Even though we're writing new ones, it's never going to replace the ones that people know us for and stuff like that. So yeah, it was almost a year ago. Like April 30th will be 1 year, and Joe died in this very house, right out there on the driveway. So, and it's weird that I'm moving into this place, because I don't know, it just kind of, I couldn't see Jeff moving away. Jeff is Joe's brother. His name's also Jeff. See him moving away, and then this place just like go to someone we didn't know or be put on the market and sold. I don't know why it felt right, but it does. It feels right to be here, and I miss him. But man, I mean, we were brothers, but like brothers, we had our ups and downs, and there's some things about his stubborn ass I don't miss. But I loved him, and I miss him.
That's awesome, and I totally get that. My grandmother is, I believe she's in her 90s, and I think about the house that they have, and that's where they raised 5 boys, and I can't imagine that going to anybody other than somebody member of their family. Yeah. Just because when you it's like they're still there and stuff like that. And like I said, my grandmother's still alive, but there's that thought in my head, like, man, maybe I should save some money and make sure that the house stays in the family or something like that, because it's like that person's essence in that being. But you don't just have a house, you have a band of someone's essence, and you're trying to honor that and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kind of things we have that we feel should stay in the family, like the guitar and amp that he used for all that time.
Oh, wow.
I have those. I'm sure there's someone out there that would pay a pretty penny for it, but it's not for sale.
So it's a family item.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yep. But let's try to warm up this situation a little bit right now. You guys are 32 years. You guys always do pretty big celebrations and stuff like that for your anniversaries and stuff like that over the years.
We got one coming up in 3 years.
Yes,
We're doing the 35.
In 3 years, where do you see this band? Like how much ass do you think you guys are going to be kicking at that point?
Oh man, if things are going the way they've been going for the last 8 months or so, I think we're gonna accomplish quite a bit in the next little bit. And I think by the time we reach 35, I think people will see a completely rejuvenated group like they're seeing now at shows. I mean, I guess it takes a terrible thing to happen to just like give you a swift kick in the ass to make you get the most out of it before it is gone. And that's what we're doing, because we don't know how much longer we have to do this. I mean, we're assuming we'll still be going at 35, and if we are, there will be a big celebration, and it'll be one that people talk about for a long time. So, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, now, how can this is probably going to come out mid-May? So, is there anything you guys want to plug? Let people know about social media? What on the web? Like, how can they get up with you and follow?
We still have a website, ANTiSEEN.com, where we sell all of our wares and music and shirts and stuff like that. And we're very active on Facebook. I haven't mastered Twitter yet. I don't understand it. Maybe I need someone to do that for me. But Facebook, website, you can reach me directly from either one of those. Going to my email sometimes, as you found out, takes you a little while to get through.
Like I said, it's probably mine because it goes to spam every once in a while, because I email Michael Jordan all the time, and it probably just goes to spam, and that's why he's not returning my emails. So, but Jeff, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you got to run to a rehearsal and stuff like that, so thank you for taking time out of your Sunday, the Lord's Day, and talking with me, and hopefully we'll do this again.
I hope so.
Yeah, hopefully maybe when 35 comes around.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.